Captain Alex Morgan stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, staring at the vast emptiness of space. The ship was on a routine patrol near Neptune, the 8th planet from the Sun. Nothing exciting had happened in weeks. The crew was bored. Alex was bored too. "Captain, we're picking up something strange," said Lieutenant Sam Green, his eyes fixed on the radar screen. "It's big, and it's not one of ours." Alex walked over to look at the screen. A large object was moving toward them. It wasn't following any known flight path used by Earthships. "Get me a visual," Alex ordered. The main screen lit up, showing a massive vessel unlike anything they had ever seen. It seemed to be made of crystal, parts of it transparent, other parts glowing with strange lights. It moved with impossible grace for something so large. "Is it a meteor?" asked Officer Jane Miller, her voice shaking slightly. "Meteors don't change direction," Alex replied, watching as the object adjusted its course, "and they don't slow down when they spot us." The strange ship was now matching their speed, keeping a distance of about 5 miles. Close enough to be seen clearly, but far enough to react if the horizon made any sudden moves. "Sir," Sam called. "Out. We're receiving a transmission. They want to talk." The bridge fell silent. First contact. The moment humanity had been waiting for, hoping for, and fearing for centuries. "Put it on screen," Alex said, straightening his uniform. The image of the starfield was replaced by something that made several crew members gasp. The being on screen was clearly not human. It stood at least 7 feet tall with iridescent scales covering its body. It had 4 arms, each ending in hands with retractable claws. Its face was reptilian, with compound eyes that glowed like embers. When it opened its mouth to speak, rows of sharp teeth became visible. "I am Zarka, commander of the Vaxari scout ship Dreadhunter," the alien said in perfect English. The translation technology they were using made its voice sound deep and slightly metallic. "You have entered space claimed by the Vaxari Empire." Alex stepped forward, keeping his expression calm despite his racing heart. "I am Captain Alex Morgan of the Earth vessel USS Horizon. We were unaware this region was claimed by anyone. We are on a scientific mission." Zarka's eyes narrowed, the glow intensifying. "Your species is unexpected," the alien commander said. "Our scans indicate your fragile biology and limited technological development. Yet you venture this far from your homeworld." "Humans are explorers by nature," Alex replied with a small smile. "We go places just to see what's there." The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh. "A dangerous habit for such a vulnerable species. Do you know what the Vaxari are, Captain Morgan?" "I'm afraid we've never encountered your kind before. We are the dominant species in this sector of the galaxy. 12 worlds serve under our protection. Some resisted. None succeeded." Zarka leaned closer to whatever was recording him. "Your species would be wise to consider its position carefully." Lieutenant Carol Wilson, the ship's xenobiologist, whispered urgently to Alex. "Captain, their biology suggests they evolved from ambush predators. Everything about them is designed to intimidate and kill. This is dangerous." Alex nodded slightly to acknowledge her warning but kept his eyes on the screen. "Commander Zarka, I propose a direct meeting to discuss our respective interests. We would be honored to host you aboard the Horizon for diplomatic talks." Carol's eyes widened in shock. Several other crew members exchanged nervous glances. Zarka seemed surprised as well. "You would invite me onto your vessel, knowing nothing about me or my intentions?" "How else can we learn about each other?" Alex replied. "We can arrange any security measures that would make you comfortable." The alien commander was silent for a moment, studying Alex with those glowing eyes. "Very well. I accept your invitation. I will bring 2 guards. You may scan us for weapons, though I warn you, a Vaxari is never truly unarmed." He flexed his clawed hands to emphasize the point. "Understood. We'll prepare a suitable meeting room and send you docking instructions. Horizon out." The screen went dark. The moment the transmission ended, the bridge erupted into chaos. "Captain, have you lost your mind?" Carol asked, her face pale. You just invited apex predators onto our ship. They could take the whole crew hostage, Security Chief Greg Peters added. Or worse. Alex raised his hands to quiet them. Listen to me. They could have attacked us without warning. They didn't. They want to talk. That gives us a chance. A chance to get eaten, someone muttered. A chance to make history, Alex corrected. The right kind of history. First contact that doesn't end in violence. He turned to his officers. Greg, arrange security protocols, but make sure none of our people look threatening. Carol, prepare information about Earth they might find relevant. Sam, get the conference room ready. As the crew rushed to prepare, Alex stared at the alien ship on the screen. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was both thrilling and terrifying. 2 hours later, Alex stood in the Horizon's docking bay, watching as the Vaxari shuttle landed. It was smaller than he expected, sleek and crystalline like its mothership. The bay doors opened and Zarka ducked to enter the human vessel. In person, the alien commander was even more imposing. His scales shifted colors slightly as he moved, creating a hypnotic effect. Behind him came 2 guards, each carrying what looked like ceremonial spears. Welcome aboard the Horizon, Commander, Alex said, giving a slight bow. Zarka made a gesture with his upper right hand that might have been his culture's equivalent of a greeting. Your ship is smaller than I expected, he said, looking around with what seemed like disappointment. We're still learning how to build them, Alex replied with a smile. This way to the conference room. As they walked through the corridors, crew members pressed themselves against the walls, staring at the aliens with a mixture of fear and wonder. Zarka noticed their reactions. Your people fear us, he observed. Yet you do not. Why is that, Captain Morgan? I respect your capabilities, Alex answered carefully. Fear wouldn't help me do my job right now. They entered the conference room where Carol, Greg, and the ship's first officer, Joe Reeves, waited. Everyone stood as the aliens entered. Please be seated, Alex said, gesturing to specially reinforced chairs brought from the cargo bay. Can we offer you refreshments? We have brought our own, Zarka replied, nodding to one of his guards who placed a container on the table. Your biochemistry would find ours incompatible. The meeting began formally, with both sides sharing basic information about their species and societies. The Vaxari Empire spanned 27 star systems. They had been spacefaring for over 2,000 years. Earth, in comparison, had barely taken its first steps into the solar system. Your species confuses me, Captain, Zarka said after 2 hours of talks. You acknowledge your technological inferiority. You recognize our physical advantages. You know we have conquered multiple worlds. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Lower. Why aren't you scared, human? Alex met the alien's gaze steadily. Because fear doesn't change facts, Commander. We're here. You're here. We can either find a way to exist together or we can fight. I prefer the first option. And if I preferred the second? Zarka asked, his claws extending slightly. Then I'd still try for the first, Alex replied calmly, until that became impossible. His reply made her blood run cold, not from fear, but from something the Vaxari had rarely encountered in their conquests, a prey species that refused to act like prey. Fascinating, Zarka said finally. My superiors will want to know more about humanity. Expect a diplomatic envoy to your homeworld within 1 of your months. As the aliens returned to their shuttle, Carol approached Alex. What just happened? Alex watched the shuttle depart. I think we just bought Earth some time. Let's hope we use it wisely. The Vaxari ship arrived at Earth exactly 28 days after the meeting near Neptune. This time it wasn't a scout ship, but a massive diplomatic vessel that filled the sky over Geneva. People stopped in the streets to stare up at it, some taking pictures, others holding their children close. Unlike the crystal structure of the scout ship, this vessel was darker, with sections that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It hovered silently above Lake Geneva, casting a shadow over half the city. Dr. Patrick Hayes stood on the landing platform that had been hastily built in the week before the aliens' arrival. At 62, with gray hair and steady hands, he didn't look like someone who would be humanity's first official diplomat to an alien species. But his background in anthropology and linguistics, plus his calm personality, had made him the UN's choice for this critical role. "Are you nervous?" asked his assistant, Olivia Clark, as they watched the alien shuttle descend from the larger ship. "Terrified," Patrick admitted with a small smile. "But that's appropriate. Fear keeps us alert." The shuttle landed softly on the platform. Its doors opened with a hiss of escaping air. From inside emerged a tall figure that made even the prepared officials take a step back. This Vexari was different from the descriptions they had received of Commander Zarka. Slightly smaller but no less intimidating, with scales that shifted from emerald to sapphire depending on the light. The alien moved with grace that seemed impossible for a creature of such size. "Welcome to Earth," Patrick said, stepping forward, with his hand extended. Then, remembering the briefing about Vaxari customs, he quickly changed to a slight bow instead. "I am Ambassador Nixara," the alien replied in a voice that was surprisingly melodic. "The High Command has sent me to assess your world's potential." "Potential for what?" Patrick asked. "For alliance or service," Nixara replied matter-of-factly. "All species eventually find their place within the Empire, some as equals, most as servants." The bluntness of the statement caught Patrick off guard, but he maintained his diplomatic smile. "I look forward to showing you why we would make better allies than servants." Nixara made a clicking sound with her mandibles that might have been amusement. That remains to be seen. The next few weeks were filled with tense meetings. Nixara made it clear from the start that Earth stood at a crossroads. The Vaxari Empire was expanding, and humanity could either join willingly as a protected species or resist and face conquest. "We have studied your history," she said during their third meeting, mandibles clicking softly as she spoke. "Your species spends much of its energy fighting itself. You are divided, vulnerable. The transition to our rule would be beneficial to your long-term survival." Patrick remained calm despite the threat. "We appreciate your concern for our welfare, Ambassador, but humans value their independence above almost everything else." "Independence is an illusion in a galaxy of predators," Nixara replied. "Without our protection, you would eventually fall to someone else, someone who might not offer the generous terms we do." When not in official meetings, Nixara observed humanity with growing confusion. She visited schools where children played fearlessly in playgrounds near her compound, not seeming to care about the alien observers. She watched emergency workers rush into a burning building to save strangers. She saw soldiers stand at attention without flinching as her guards circled them, sniffing and growling. During her 6th meeting with Patrick, her frustration finally showed. "Why aren't you scared, human?" she asked, mandibles flaring. "Your species faces extinction or subjugation, yet you continue as if nothing has changed." Patrick considered the question carefully before answering. "We've always lived with that knowledge, Ambassador. Mortality is our constant companion. It doesn't stop us from living." His reply made her blood run cold. The concept was alien to the Vaxari, who had eliminated most natural threats on their homeworld eons ago and had been the dominant species in their sector for thousands of years. "Explain," she demanded. "Humans are fragile," Patrick said. "We always have been. We evolved on a planet filled with creatures that could kill us easily. Faster predators, stronger herbivores, tiny bacteria and viruses. We've faced extinction-level events multiple times in our history. We live with the knowledge that a single asteroid could end our civilization." He leaned forward slightly. "Fear is our oldest companion, Ambassador. We've just learned to live with it, to use it rather than be controlled by it." Nixara was silent for a long moment. "Your Captain Morgan on the horizon said something similar," she finally said. "He claimed fear doesn't change facts." "He's right," Patrick replied. "Being afraid of you doesn't change the fact that you're here. So we deal with what is, not what we wish would be. That evening, Nixara sent a message to the High Command. The humans were more complex than initial reports had suggested. Their physical weakness was evident, but their psychological resilience was unexpected. Further study was required before determining their place in the Empire. The High Command's response came swiftly. Continue assessment. If humans resist classification, increase pressure. Test their limits. The next day, Nixara arrived at the diplomatic compound with 6 heavily armed guards. Her tone had changed, becoming more demanding. The High Command requires a demonstration of Earth's resources, she announced. We will begin with an inspection of your military capabilities and key industrial centers. Patrick recognized the shift in approach. That would be difficult to arrange on short notice, he said carefully. Many nations would need to agree. Your internal divisions are not our concern, Nixara replied coldly. Either comply with the inspection or we will conduct it ourselves. The threat hung in the air between them. Patrick knew that a global alien inspection could easily become the first stage of an invasion. I'll need to consult with the Security Council, he said, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. You have one of your days, Nixara stated, rising to leave. We grow impatient with human diplomatic delays. After she left, Olivia looked at Patrick with wide, frightened eyes. What do we do now? Patrick sighed. We buy time, and we hope that our curiosity is more interesting to them than our fear. That night, as Nixara returned to her ship, she was surprised to see a group of humans gathered near the landing platform. Instead of protesting or showing fear, they were simply watching with interested expressions. Some were taking pictures. A few children waved. One small girl broke away from her mother and ran toward Nixara before anyone could stop her. The Vexari guards raised their weapons, but Nixara signaled them to hold. The little girl stopped a few feet away and looked up at the towering alien. Are you really from outer space? She asked, her eyes wide with wonder rather than fear. Nixara replied, surprised by the child's boldness. Cool, the girl said. Do you want to see my drawing? I made it for you. She held up a piece of paper with a colorful if inaccurate drawing of what appeared to be Nixara, standing next to the child, both surrounded by stars. For the first time in her long career as an imperial ambassador, Nixara was speechless. This, she realized, was what made humans truly dangerous. Not weapons or technology, but their ability to face the unknown with curiosity instead of fear. She took the drawing carefully with one clawed hand. Thank you, she said simply. As she boarded her shuttle, Nixara knew her next report to the High Command would be complicated. Humans were not easily categorized, and that made them unpredictable. 3 months after the Vaxari arrived on Earth, Ambassador Nixara was suddenly recalled to the mothership. The diplomatic compound fell silent for 2 days. No messages came from the massive ship hovering over Geneva. The world held its breath, waiting. On the morning of the 3rd day, a new shuttle descended. This one was larger and more heavily armored than Nixara's vessel had been. It landed with a heavy thud that seemed to shake the platform. The doors opened to reveal a Vaxari unlike any humans had seen before. Nearly 8 feet tall with battle-scarred scales of deep crimson and black, the alien's forearms bore metal bands engraved with symbols. His eyes glowed orange like burning coals. I am General Drakmor, he announced as he stepped onto Earth, his voice so deep it seemed to rumble through the ground. The Empire's patience has ended. Dr. Patrick Hayes stood his ground despite the intimidating figure before him. Welcome to Earth, General. I am Dr. Hayes, humanity's diplomatic. I am not here for diplomacy, Drakmor interrupted. Ambassador Nixara's reports indicate your species requires a demonstration of Vaxari power. Before anyone could respond, the general raised a device from one of his 4 hands. A holographic display appeared, showing a small island in the Pacific Ocean. This landmass is uninhabited according to our scans, Drakmor stated. He pressed a button on the device. On screens around the world, people watched in horror as a beam of light shot down from the Vaxari mothership. The island glowed bright white for a moment, then simply disappeared, leaving only churning water where land had been seconds before. That was a minimal weapons discharge, Drakmore said calmly. The UN Security Council will convene in 1 hour. I will attend. The Security Council chamber was packed with representatives from every nation. Armed Vaxari guards stood at each entrance. General Drakmore sat at the center of the room, surveying the humans with what seemed like bored contempt. Your species has one final opportunity, he announced to the silent chamber. The High Command has authorized me to offer terms. Choose one champion to face me in single combat. If they survive for 1 hour, we will continue negotiations. If not, we take your world. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Delegates shouted questions and objections. Security personnel moved closer to their leaders. Through it all, Drakmore sat motionless, waiting. A woman stood up from the American delegation. Representative Linda Reyes was 40 years old with short brown hair and steady eyes. Before entering politics, she had served as a Navy SEAL, one of the first women to complete the training. I volunteer, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. The room fell silent. Linda walked to the center of the chamber, stopping in front of the alien general. At 5'6", she looked almost childlike next to the towering figure. I accept your challenge, she said calmly. Drakmore's compound eyes narrowed as he studied her. You are half my size, with no natural weapons. He stood, towering, over her. Do you wish to die, human? Linda smiled, the expression never reaching her eyes. We humans have a saying, General. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. The combat arena was established in the Nevada desert. A circular area 1 mile across was marked with red flags. The rules were simple. Linda had to survive within this area for 1 hour. She could use one weapon of her choice. Drakmore would use only his natural abilities. Linda chose a combat knife, nothing more. Billions watched worldwide as cameras positioned around the arena captured every angle of the impending battle. Linda wore a simple black uniform. Drakmore wore only a ceremonial sash across his scaled chest. Begin, announced a mechanical voice, and a large digital clock started counting down from 60. Drakmore didn't immediately attack. He circled slowly, studying his human opponent. Linda matched his movements, keeping the distance between them constant. Running will only delay the inevitable, the general said. I'm not planning to run, Linda replied. At exactly 58 minutes remaining, Drakmore charged. His speed was shocking for something so large. Linda barely dodged the first swipe of his claws, rolling in the dust and coming up in a fighting stance. For the next 10 minutes, it was all she could do to stay out of his reach. She used the terrain, ducking behind rocks and sliding through narrow gaps too small for the general's bulk. Each time she emerged, she was a little closer to the center of the arena. At 45 minutes remaining, Drakmore cornered her against a large boulder. His claws slashed forward. Linda ducked, but not fast enough. 3 deep gashes opened across her left shoulder. First blood to the alien. The crowd watching from a safe distance gasped. In Geneva, the Security Council members sat in stunned silence. This was no longer a diplomatic incident. It was a desperate fight for survival. Linda didn't panic. She used the boulder to push herself up and dive between Drakmore's legs, slashing upward with her knife as she passed. Green liquid splattered the ground. Now the Vaxari was bleeding too. Drakmore roared in anger or pain, no one could tell which. He spun with surprising agility, but Linda was already moving to a new position. You surprise me, human, he said, his voice a low growl. But you cannot win. I don't need to win, Linda replied, breathing hard. I just need to survive. The next 30 minutes were a brutal dance. Linda suffered 2 more injuries, a gash across her back and a broken arm when she blocked a blow that would have taken her head off. But she kept moving, kept fighting. The Vaxari general was bleeding from multiple small wounds, none serious, but each one a reminder that his supposedly weak opponent refused to submit. With 5 minutes remaining on the clock, Drakmore changed tactics. He stopped pursuing Linda and instead stood at the center of the arena. "Enough games," he said. "Face me directly or forfeit." Linda knew it was a trap. The smart move would be to keep her distance for the final minutes. But she also knew something about pride, both human and apparently Vaxari. She walked toward him, knife held ready, her broken arm hanging useless at her side. Blood had soaked half her uniform. She left footprints of red in the dust. "Why? Aren't you scared, human?" Drakmore demanded as she approached, his mandibles clicking in what might have been agitation. "I could tear you apart with minimal effort." Her reply made his blood run cold. "Because we've been fighting things bigger and stronger than us since we climbed down from the trees, General. Humans don't need to be the strongest to win. We just need to be the most stubborn." For a moment, they stood facing each other in silence. Then the buzzer sounded. 60 minutes had passed. Linda Reyes had survived. She didn't smile or celebrate. She simply nodded to the general and turned to walk out of the arena. Medical teams rushed toward her. Drakmore watched her go, his expression unreadable to human observers. Without a word, he returned to his shuttle and ascended to the mothership. That evening, a message arrived for the Security Council. The Vaxari would extend the negotiation period by 1 Earth year. During this time, they would observe humanity more closely before making their final determination of Earth status. In a military hospital, Linda Reyes lay recovering from her wounds. A doctor checking her bandages asked the question everyone wanted to know. "Were you really not afraid?" Linda laughed softly, wincing at the pain in her ribs. "I was terrified the entire time, but fear is just information. It doesn't get to make my decisions for me." 50 million light-years away, the Vaxari High Command received General Drakmore's report. For the first time in their recorded history, they were uncertain how to proceed with a conquest. The humans were not like other species they had encountered. They knew fear, but they did not let it control them. Perhaps a new approach was needed. The Vaxari High Command was not pleased with the results of General Drakmore's challenge. Humans had proven more resilient than expected. More concerning, they seemed to lack the proper fear response that made other species easy to control. AO. New strategy was needed. "We must understand them better," declared Supreme Commander Vornak during the Emergency Council meeting. "If we cannot intimidate them through shows of strength, we must learn how they think." Their plan was both simple and complex. Infiltrate human society. Study them from within. Find their true weaknesses. Commander Silvex was chosen for this dangerous mission. Smaller than most Vaxari warriors and skilled in the art of deception, she was equipped with advanced technology that could disguise her appearance. The device, worn as a collar around her neck, bent light and created a convincing human form around her real body. Her mission: observe a typical human community and report on what made humans so fearless in the face of superior force. The small town of Riverdale, Iowa was selected as her observation point. With just under 5,000 residents, it represented a good sample of Middle America. Silvex took the identity of Sylvia Fox, a new high school science teacher. Her first day teaching was nearly a disaster. The disguise worked perfectly, but Silvex found human teenagers to be puzzling creatures. They seemed to fear small social embarrassments more than actual threats to their safety. "Ms. Fox, why are you so stiff when you walk?" asked one bold student. Silvex, unused to her human disguise, had been moving too carefully. "I have a back injury," she improvised. From a previous career. The students accepted this without question. Humans were remarkably unquestioning of small oddities, she noted in her first report. Perhaps because they themselves were so variable in appearance and behavior. Over the next few weeks, Silvex observed 3 specific humans who interested her. Each showed the strange fearlessness that had confounded Vaxari understanding. First was Officer Ben Carter, a local policeman. Ben was 40 years old, slightly overweight, with a gentle smile that hid the fact that he had twice run into burning buildings to save strangers before fire crews arrived. Silvex watched him break up a fight outside a bar, walking calmly between 2 men twice his size without drawing his weapon. Next was Nurse Emma Scott, who worked tirelessly through a viral outbreak at the town's nursing home despite the danger to herself. Emma was small, quiet, and according to Silvex's scans, suffering from a minor heart condition. Yet she worked 20-hour shifts when needed, putting others before her own health. Finally, there was Ryan Phillips, a firefighter who had recently rushed into a collapsing building to save a child's pet rabbit. The act made no logical sense to Silvex. Risking a human life for a small animal? But the town treated Ryan as a hero, not a fool. None of these humans had exceptional physical capabilities. They possessed no special weapons or defenses, yet they all displayed a disregard for personal safety that baffled her Vaxari sensibilities. One evening, Silvex was grading papers in her small rented house when the emergency alert system sounded on her phone. Heavy rains had caused the river to overflow. Flash flooding threatened the eastern side of town. Evacuation orders were in effect. As a scientist, Silvex was curious. As a Vaxari warrior, she was also aware that chaotic situations provided the best observation opportunities. She drove toward the flooding, parking her car on high ground and walking toward the emergency response center. Officer Ben was there, organizing evacuations. He spotted her and waved. "Ms. Fox, we need volunteers. Can you help check if people need rides out?" Before she could consider the implications, Silvex found herself in a rescue boat with Ben, heading into the flooded streets. Houses stood like islands in the muddy water. Some residents were stubbornly staying while others waved frantically for help. "Why do some refuse to leave?" she asked as Ben guided the boat. "People get attached to places, to things," he explained. "Sometimes they can't imagine losing their home, so they convince themselves the danger isn't real." They turned down a street where the water was getting deeper. The current grew stronger, pushing against the small boat. "We should turn back," Silvex said, her Vaxari instincts sensing the increasing danger. "Just one more house," Ben insisted. "The Wilsons have a baby. I want to make sure they got out." As they approached the house, a surge of water hit the boat. It tipped sideways, throwing both of them into the cold, rushing flood. Silvex felt her body slam against something hard underwater. The impact damaged her disguise collar. She surfaced, gasping, and realized with horror that her human appearance was flickering. In moments, it would fail completely. Ben was a few feet away, struggling against the current. "Grab my hand," he shouted, reaching toward her. Silvex hesitated. If he saw her true form, her mission would be compromised. The High Command would consider it a failure. But the current was pulling her under again, and her swimming skills were poor in this unfamiliar body. She reached out, their hands connected. Ben pulled her toward a half-submerged tree, fighting the current with all his strength. As they clung to the branches, Silvex felt her disguise finally fail. The human appearance dissolved like mist, revealing her true Vaxari form. Iridescent scales, 4 arms and all. Ben's eyes widened in shock, and he flinched back but remarkably maintained his grip on the tree branch. "Why aren't you scared, human?" she hissed, her voice returning to its natural Vaxari cadence as the voice modulator failed. "I am your enemy." His reply made her blood run cold. "Right now, you're just someone who needs help. We can sort out the enemy stuff when we're not drowning." The concept was so alien to her warrior culture that she could barely process it. Mercy without advantage, courage without glory, helping an enemy simply because they needed help. As they clung to the tree waiting for rescue, Ben kept his distance but didn't flee or attack. He even warned her when he heard helicopter rotors approaching. "You should go," he said, "unless you want to start an interstellar incident in Riverdale, Iowa." Silvex studied him, trying to understand. "You would let me escape, even knowing what I am? What I was sent to do?" Ben shrugged, water dripping from his soaked uniform. "I'm a cop in a small town, not the president. Whatever's happening between our species is above my pay grade. Besides," he added with a tired smile, "you've been a pretty good science teacher from what I hear." Using her natural Vaxari strength, Silvex pulled herself through the water to the nearest house. Before disappearing inside, she looked back at the human still clinging to the tree. "We would never show such mercy," she said. "It makes no logical sense. Maybe that's why you'll never really understand us," Ben replied. That night, as emergency, crews rescued stranded residents and began cleanup efforts. Silvex transmitted one final report to her superiors before disappearing. Humans are dangerous not because they are fearless, but because their fear does not control them. They act despite it, often against their own self-interest. This unpredictability makes them impossible to control through conventional means. She added a personal note, something no Vaxari warrior had ever included in an official report. "I believe we are making a mistake. These humans should not be our enemies." The High Command received her message with growing concern. 3 attempts to understand humanity had failed. It was time for more drastic measures. The Vaxari High Council gathered in their grand chamber aboard the mothership. For the first time in their 5,000 years of expansion across the stars, they faced a serious dilemma. 3 different approaches to Earth had failed to yield the expected results. Captain Morgan had shown no fear during first contact. Dr. Hayes had calmly explained that humans lived with fear rather than being controlled by it. Representative Reyes had survived combat against their greatest warrior, and now Commander Silvex had vanished after suggesting humans were not suitable for conquest. Supreme Leader Krovak, ruler of the Vaxari Empire for over 2 centuries, studied the reports with glowing eyes. His scales, once brilliant crimson, had faded to a deep burgundy with age, but his mind remained sharp. "These humans," he said slowly, "are physically inferior in every measurable way. Yet our psychological warfare has no effect. Our intimidation tactics fail. They acknowledge their weakness yet stand firm." The science director flicked her mandibles nervously. "Perhaps we should simply take what we want by force. We have the firepower to subdue their major cities within days." "And then—" "What?" asked Krovak. "Rule a planet of beings who do not fear us? Who might resist forever? The resources required for permanent occupation would exceed the value gained." After long debate, Krovak made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Instead of sending more warships, he would go to Earth himself. Alone. The news that the supreme leader of the Vaxari Empire wanted to land in New York City sent governments worldwide into panic. Military forces were put on high alert. Evacuation plans were prepared. But when the small shuttle descended from the mothership and landed gently in the middle of Central Park, it was clear this was not an attack. Mayor Sofia Martinez of New York City volunteered to meet the alien leader. At 63, with silver hair and laugh lines around her eyes, she had seen her city through countless crises. She walked toward the shuttle surrounded by curious civilians rather than armed guards. The contrast was striking, the approaching, hulking alien warlord facing a gray-haired woman in a simple blue suit with no visible weapons. Krovak was even more impressive than General Drakmor had been. Standing nearly 9 feet tall, his scaled body bore the marks of countless battles. Each of his forearms ended in claws that could tear through metal. A cape of shimmering material flowed behind him as he walked. He stopped 10 feet from Sofia. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, the alien warlord and the human mayor, with Central Park spread around them and the New York skyline rising in the distance. "Why aren't you scared, human?" Krovak asked, genuinely puzzled. "I command the most powerful fleet in this sector of the galaxy." Sofia's reply made his blood run cold. "Oh, I'm terrified. But that's never stopped us before. We've spent our entire existence being afraid. Of predators, of nature, of each other, of the dark. We built civilization anyway. We explored our world anyway. We reached for the stars anyway. Fear is just our co-pilot, not our prison." Krovak tilted his massive head, studying her with new interest. "You admit your fear. Yet you stand before me unarmed." "What would be the point of weapons?" Sofia asked with a small smile. "If you wanted to kill me, you could do it before I blinked. If you wanted to destroy this city, you could do it from orbit. We can't stop you with force, but we can try to understand each other." The Vaxari leader was silent for a long moment. Then he did something unprecedented in the history of his species. He lowered himself to one knee, bringing his height closer to the humans. "In 5,000 years of conquest," he said, his deep voice softer now, "we have never encountered a species like yours. The physically weak who act with strength. The outmatched who refuse to submit. Those who know fear but are not ruled by it." He rose again to his full height. "I wish to speak with your world leaders, not to demand surrender, but to discuss alliance." 2 days later, in the United Nations General Assembly Hall, representatives from every nation on Earth gathered to hear the Vaxari Supreme Leader. The massive alien stood at the central podium, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "Without need for amplification, the Vaxari Empire has existed for 5 millennia, he began. "In that time, we have encountered hundreds of species. Some became our allies. Most became our servants. A few chose extinction rather than submission." He paused, his glowing eyes sweeping across the gathered humans. "We believed this was the natural order of the galaxy. The strong rule, the weak serve or perish. But humans challenged this understanding." Krovak raised one of his forearms, activating a holographic display. It showed Captain Alex Morgan standing firm before Commander Zarka. Then Dr. Patrick Hayes calmly facing Ambassador Nixara. Representative Linda Reyes bloodied but unbowed against General Drakmore. Officer Ben Carter reaching out to save a revealed Vaxari spy during the flood. "You are physically weaker than many species we have conquered with ease. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Yet you face us not with denial of your weakness, but with acceptance of it. And in that acceptance, you find a strength we do not understand." He deactivated the hologram and spread all 4 of his arms in a gesture never before seen by humans. The Vaxari sign of deepest respect. For the first time in its history, the Vaxari Empire offers an alliance of equals rather than demanding submission. "We have much to learn from each other. Your creativity, our technology, your courage, our strength." The chamber erupted in applause and cheers. Not everyone trusted the alien's words, of course. Many remained suspicious. But it was a beginning. As the human delegates and Vaxari representatives began the long process of formalizing the first true interspecies alliance in Earth's history, Krovak found himself in a private conversation with Dr. Patrick Hayes. "There is something I still do not understand," the Vaxari leader admitted. "When faced with a superior force, the logical response is submission or flight. Yet humans choose a third path, standing firm while acknowledging their fear. How is this possible?" Patrick thought for a moment before answering. "Perhaps because we've never had the luxury of being the strongest species on our own world. We evolved surrounded by faster predators and stronger competitors. We survived not by being the strongest, but by being the most adaptable, the most cooperative, the most stubborn." He smiled slightly. "In our earliest days, we didn't have claws or fangs or armored scales. We had each other, and we had the ability to keep going despite our fear." Krovak nodded slowly. "A strange evolutionary path, but an effective one, it seems." As the Supreme Leader returned to his ship that evening, he reflected on what they had learned. The most dangerous species in the galaxy wasn't the strongest or the most technologically advanced. It was the one that knew its weaknesses and pressed forward regardless. The one that turned cooperation into strength. The one that treated fear as a challenge rather than a deterrent. The Vaxari had ruled through intimidation for thousands of years. Now they faced a species that could not be intimidated. It was both troubling and fascinating. Humanity would change the galaxy not through conquest, but through their stubborn refusal to know their place in it. And perhaps, Krovak thought, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. The end